Just wanted to introduce myself quickly. My name is Ramesh Dwarkanath. I am a solutions architect based out of Boston, Massachusetts, and I I'm part of the enterprise solutions architect team in AWS. And as part of that, I help our enterprise customers in the Northeast area. You know, understand their issues, challenges, and help them design and implement solutions. Um, so I am originally from India, and I came to the US to do my master's in computer science, and my first job was out of Boston, and I've been here since. And In terms of my exposure, my exposure to technology, the initial, I guess, it was almost like a chance thing for me, because when I got into undergraduate, I got into like computer science. At that time, computer science was just coming up. There were other areas, other majors like electrical, mechanical and electronics and so on that were more popular. But people said, hey, this is something up and coming. And at that time, it was almost like a chance thing. I mean, I knew this would be good and useful. So I took a chance and, it turned out well for me. And so since then I've been in technology, so in various forms, whether it is the system administration aspect of it, the development aspect of it, and lately in the solutions architecture space, gives you a good perspective on looking at all the different pieces, because as a solutions architect, you have to know the end-to-end of any system. You need to understand what that system, what are the different components of it, what are the different pieces, what are the different layers, interfaces, and so on, and how can you help solve the problem. One of the things that one of my first managers who I worked for when I joined told me has stuck in my mind since then, and his piece of advice was to really keep your eye out for two things at the same time, right, and in parallel, as in once you're in an organization, you want to have a career growth, and you kind of go up the ladder and have a career within the organization. So that's definitely something everybody does and should be done. But he also mentioned keeping always make sure that you have keep an eye on marketability. What that really means is, keep up to date on the skills, keep up to date on what the latest is in the industry. That may or may not be necessarily required in your job in the organization itself, but it helps, make an effort to do that. And invariably what happens is, a lot of times you want to change jobs, whether it's voluntarily, involuntarily, whatever the case might be, you do end up, having that level of knowledge and industry and keeping up to date helps tremendously. Gives you a lot of options if you want to change. So I think that to me is a pivotal piece of advice that I have kind of tried to follow through all through my career. So that's pretty much like a couple of things about me. So with that, I would like to jump into the actual presentation. So today we're going to talk about the Amazon Web Services itself. What is AWS? What value does it bring to the customers, and how do we go about helping our customers? That's really kind of the overall theme that we're going to talk about today. And so let's jump right in. So what is the cloud, right? What I mean by what does that mean? How do you define what a cloud is, right? So it's essentially it's an on-demand delivery of IT resources with a pay-as-you-go pricing, right? What that means is you really, as a customer, as a company, You don't have to buy anymore, buy, own, or maintain data centers, servers. You just acquire whatever compute, storage, network, power, databases, and any other services that you require on an as-needed basis from a cloud provider like AWS, right? So and then it would be something similar to take it like utility, right? So for example, electricity, you come in, you go into a room, you flip a switch, and you get electricity, and the electric company, so you're not generating your own electricity. Somebody else is doing it for you and then sending it out to you, and you just flip the switch. As long as the light is on in the room, you pay for that, right? And the moment you switch it off, you stop paying for it. It's the same concept, right? What AWS does, it manages the technology and infrastructure for you in a secure environment, and then you access those resources via internet or any other private connection, right? And then you only pay for what you consume, what you use. So if you're using any virtual machines, VMs, or databases, or any other resources, as long as you're using it, you pay for it, right? You can actually shut it down, terminate it, whatever, and then you don't pay for that. So the other advantage is the capacity can grow and shrink instantly, right? And that's actually a huge thing with cloud and AWS in particular, is like you can actually get there's elasticity in it, right? So what you end up getting is if you have a sudden surge of a influx of requests coming in, or a load coming in, right, and you want to increase your capacity. Traditionally, it has always been a challenge, right? In a data center, you buy like 3 servers, right, and then you're running your environment on those servers. But then suddenly, maybe once or twice a year, maybe you're retail, you have a retail outfit, and then during the Thanksgiving or Black Friday or Cyber Monday, you get this sudden surge and you want to increase your capacity. Now those are like once or twice, maybe thrice a year kind of events that you need extra capacity in. What do you do in those situations, right? So in those times, like standard, like normally you need these 3 servers, right? But during those times, maybe you need 5 servers, 7 servers, or 8 servers, or whatever, to handle that extra load. Now you can't necessarily buy those 8 or 9 servers upfront and keep it for the year, because that's going to be expensive, because you're not really using it, right? So you want to be able to only expand when you need it, and then once that extra load is gone, right, you want to be able to bring it down, right? That's really what elasticity is, and that's the power that cloud brings to the table, is the fact that you can actually just grow and shrink your capacity at will, right? Now, in terms of just from a little bit of a history around AWS itself, right? So we had about a decade of experience, right? After over a decade of experience of building and running Amazon.com, which I'm sure everybody's familiar with, right? So we realized that we had developed a core competency in operating massive scale technologies and data centers, right? And then when we did that, then we said, okay, we have this expertise, right? How can we leverage this, right? So we embarked on a mission to offer this to developers and businesses to build sophisticated, modern, and scalable applications, right? So basically offer this as a service to small businesses, or to developers, individual developers who they can't really afford to own these data centers, or own this amount of compute, or own these kind of different kind of services, right? So we thought this would be a good way to kind of offer our expertise and build a business around it. So since then, AWS is the fastest growing multi-billion-dollar enterprise IT vendor in the world, right? So what all of this really means is that whatever you want in a traditional data center is available to you at your fingertips, with the ability, with the click of a button, right? To be able to run your applications reliably, securely, and at scale, right? so that's really what AWS is all about. That's kind of the kind of just a little bit of history around how we got started. So what does AWS bring to the table, right? So there are these, like, at a high level, you can think of these 5 different things that AWS brings to the table. First one is agility. The ability for you to be able to experiment and innovate a lot more quickly and frequently, right? What we call as fail fast, right? So what that really means is you come up with an idea, you want to be able to quickly iterate on that idea and then figure out, okay, is that a viable idea or will it fail, right? And you want to know that fairly quickly, fairly fast. You don't want to know about it like 6 months down the road, a year down the road, right? That will be an expensive proposition for you. And again, a lot of these things have like a time component to it, a criticality, like a time to market kind of component to it. So you don't want to necessarily spend too much time just kind of doing like a proof of concept and things, and you might like miss the boat, or you might realize that, hey, customers no longer want it, or so on and so forth. So you want to be able to iterate quickly and fail fast. So that's the power that agility, that AWS brings to it. Like, you can just, with a click of a button, spin up an EC2 instance, or like a virtual machine, or get some database, or spin up a database, or get some storage, and so on, right? So you can get it very quickly. So that way you can just build your own application, run it, and then figure out, hey, okay, it makes sense, let's build on it, or let's not dump this idea, let's just move on, right? The second one is cost savings. I mean, this is obviously one of the most important ideas. One of the important reasons why cloud is becoming and AWS is becoming very popular is it is expensive to run your own data centers. The heating, the cooling, the management, the physical infrastructure, and so on. Right? There's a lot that goes into managing these big data centers, that's a fixed cost, right? That's a cost, it's a huge cost, and that it typically only increases, never decreases, right? So the advantage that you have with going on to like AWS is you don't have to own any of the data centers. You are just renting that infrastructure, right? You're just using it for, you're only using it for what you want, and only using it for the time that you want, and then just paying it for what you're using, right? So we call it as moving into more of a operating OpEx model, or an operating expense model, which is really paying for what you're consuming, right? As opposed to like a traditional model, what is called as CapEx, which is capital expenses, which is really paying for all your infrastructure upfront. I mean, that's been the traditional model. That's how typically companies have done. They allocate a chunk of money, they buy all this hardware upfront, and then there is some depreciation that happens, and so on. But there's that upfront huge cost that comes in with all of that, right? That doesn't exist with AWS, or with the way when you get onto AWS. We talked about elasticity, scaling up and down based on the needs of your business. Again, you only need it maybe 2 times a year. You need that extra capacity. That's it. You'll only get that extra. You can use that extra capacity only for that amount of time, right? And just bring it down once you are over that aspect of it, and then just not pay for it. So that way you are making the most optimum use of the technology that you have, right? And then innovate faster, right? So again, it goes with the agility. So if you're experimenting, if you're able to, you have a ton of ideas, and you want to be able to experiment fast, right? So that it helps you really innovate, right? And one of the other pieces is since we are taking care of your since we are taking care of the infrastructure, right? So what we call as the undifferentiated, we call it as the undifferentiated workload, right? So that undifferentiated workload is something you know, doesn't really add any business value for you, right? So what it does is that you have the, you are focused on your business or application logic, right? What will generate revenue for you? What differentiates you from somebody else, right? So if we let you focus on that, right? And so you don't have to necessarily worry about, okay, I need to, configure these servers. I need to have, manage these databases. I need to, make sure that I have enough, storage space, and so on and so forth, right? So we don't, so we take care of all of that aspect, right? All you need to do is worry about your applications that need to run on that, on top of that infrastructure, right? So what that really helps you do, right, is innovate faster. So because you're only focused around your, your innovation, your ideas, right? And so you're able to innovate on that. You're able to move a lot faster on that. And then finally, you have go global in minutes. So we have this, huge infrastructure spread across the world. So essentially we have across on every continent in the, on Earth. So it is very likely that no matter where your customers are in the world, right, we will have some presence close to them, right? So that is a huge advantage that you get moving on to AWS, because it's like, just managing one data center in one location itself so expensive. So you can just imagine if you were to just take all that and you were to try to build that infrastructure across the world, I mean, that would just exponentially increase in terms of cost and maintenance. So that's what we, from an AWS perspective, provide you, is that extensive, reliable, and global infrastructure. So just to kind of add to the, just adding a little bit more on the previous slide, right? So we have all of these different features that we provide, in terms of the the capabilities that AWS provides, right? So we have security. So we have these fine-grained control, what we call as IAM, or identity and access management. And what that lets you do is, you can control at a very a minute level and a very granular level in terms of who can do what, when, where, right? And what that lets you do is, then it, we always, AWS in general believes, obviously security is a paramount to AWS, right, in its functioning. And we always believe in the principle of least privilege. What that means is, anybody should have access to only what they require, right? Nothing more, nothing less, exactly what they require. And we give you enough tools to be able to do that, right? So obviously it helps you with the overall, improving your overall security posture. Service depth and breadth, right? We'll go through a slide on that. So we have 175 plus services today to support essentially any cloud workload that you have, right? There isn't really any workload that we can't really tackle for you, right, on AWS, right? So you bring any type of, and we'll go through some of those different types of services. So regardless of whether it is like a generic core services, or depends on core service like a database or a network or EC2 instance and so on, or more higher level like IoT or machine learning or analytics and so on, right? We have kind of the whole spectrum that we can support your workload. We have experience, and experience is huge, right? So we've been managing the cloud for almost like 15 years now, since 2006, right? So we have a large customer base, so we have a lot of experience in terms of the scale, in terms of the time that we have gone through, right? And you will see the benefits. We will highlight in one of the slides later the benefits that we have really gotten with this experience that we have run, right? Global footprint, we talked about it, and we'll touch upon that again in the next couple of slides. We have about like 80 availability zones. We'll go into what availability zones means, and 25 regions. Again, they're all spread across the world, and so on, right? Machine learning, again, upcoming very, very important and critical area that every company, who wants to, it's looking to make a difference, looking to extract more value, extract, improve efficiency, right? Uses machine learning in some manner or the other, right? We provide a lot of capabilities, more than anybody else, right? In the area of machine learning. And we can help you. And the other piece is, machine learning is a complex area, right? So, but we have made sure that we have created services that actually minimizes or abstracts that complexity from an average developer, from an average user, right? So it is daunting when you look at it initially. It's a machine learning. Oh my God, I need to know all this, math and complex math and all of these different models and so on and so forth, right? You don't need to, right? So you can just take this. That's what we provide you services that lets you kind of takes away all that complexity away from you, right? And then ecosystem. So we'll again touch upon this later on. We have tens of thousands of our partners, right? It's a partner network. They're all part of the AWS partner network. These are systems integrators or system vendors, independent system vendors, ISVs, who have listings on our what we call as marketplace, and we'll touch upon that. And others, partners who can help you implement your challenge on AWS, right? So you have a business issue and you have maybe an existing relationship with a partner, or you want to bring in a partner. Maybe you don't have the right skill set in your company, or maybe you have some level of you have some company, you don't have enough people in your company, or you have, they're already stretched thin, right? So you can bring in either, AWS can help with its own resources, or we can bring in partners, and that's the big, ecosystem we talk about. And then finally, again, in the latest Gartner Magic Quadrant for cloud infrastructure, infrastructure as a service, AWS has been deemed a leader. Security. So this is something that, as I mentioned earlier, security is our #1 priority, right? So and AWS cloud has been architected to be one of the most secure cloud environments available, right? What the scale of AWS, right? We have so many different data center regions and availability zones and so many customers. What that really translates to is we are able to significantly put more investment in security policy, policing and countermeasures, and almost that almost any other large company can afford themselves, right? It's expensive, right, to invest in people, to have security experts, to have security measures put in place, right? But because of our scale, we are able to actually invest in all of that. We have the same security isolations that are employed in traditional data centers. We have physical data center security, separation of networks, isolation of hardware and storage. On top of all that, right, what the value, the big value that AWS brings to the table is all customers, regardless of their size, regardless of what kind of workload they run and so on and so forth, they inherit the best practices of policies, architecture, and processes that have been built to satisfy the needs of our most security sensitive customers, right? So we have built our infrastructure based on the needs of the most security conscious customers. The advantage that everybody else gets out of that is they get to leverage the same infrastructure, right? So you get the benefits of having that highly secure infrastructure that we created because we had to do it for certain customers, right? So that's one of the big advantage. The other piece that I want to highlight on this particular slide is this whole shared responsibility model, right? The shared responsibility model is really, security in general, typically in particular, is we are AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud, right? So what does that mean? Security of the cloud really means the physical infrastructure, the facilities, the actual compute and building blocks, right? You as a customer are responsible for security in the cloud. And that really means you are responsible to secure your own workloads, applications that you deploy on the cloud, right? The advantage of having the shared security responsibility model is you get to make decisions and have flexibility around the security of your own like sensitive data, for example, right? So you own your data, right? So AWS has nothing to do with your data. You are completely responsible. You're completely in control of your own data and applications, right? So you can control the security of your data and adjust it as you need, right? So whether if you think it's of, it's not as critical, then you can reduce the amount of security. If you think it's highly sensitive, highly critical, you can increase the security, right? So it's we leave the choice up to you, and then that and customers actually love this shared responsibility model because it gives them the flexibility of being able to have that flexibility of adjusting security. Okay. This is just a list of all the security and compliance controls. As you can see, this is a pretty big list. We have, SOC 2, HIPAA, and PCI, and so on, right? And GDPR. And depending on where you are, we probably have all of the, compliance that we are we adhere to, right? And these are all validated by third-party, auditors, and make sure that we are adhering to it. And you can have these, the artifacts for this downloaded. You can access those, reports and the attestations and the validations by the third-party auditors. You can validate it for yourself. Again, it's all independent, done by independent third-party auditors. The one thing to keep in mind is, like, again, based on the previous slide of shared responsibility model, while we provide these compliance and regulations, we do it at our own, at the AWS, at the infrastructure level of the cloud, right? You are still responsible for managing or getting that compliance from your application or data point of view, right? So that is something to still keep in mind, right? So just because AWS has these compliance doesn't necessarily mean that if you just deploy your application on top of it, you become automatically compliant. You do have to go through a extra level of validation and setting and do some compliance within your own application, right? But we don't leave you hanging, right? We provide all the tools, all the services, a lot of services to help you with that journey, right? So help you, get you to that level of certification in your own application or data. But just wanted to highlight that shared responsibility model. A high-level view of how our global infrastructure looks like. Again, those blue dots are the regions. So we have 25 regions. They are spread all across the world. As you can see, practically in every continent we have one. And each of those regions are made up of availability zones, right? And these availability zones are really, it's one or more. An availability zone is really one or more discrete data centers, each with its own power, networking, connectivity, and they're housed in separate facilities, right? So if you look at this diagram, you can see the resilience that is built into the AWS global infrastructure, right? So you have these regions which are, again, spread out all across the world, right? Now each of these regions in turn have these availability zones, right? Which also are at least 2+, right? Minimum of 2 or 3 per region, maybe more, right? And each of these availability zones themselves, each one availability zone has is made up of multiple data centers. So you can see that we really don't talk about in terms of data centers, right? We talk about in terms of availability zones, right? So you can see the kind of the built-in redundancy and the availability that we have in this infrastructure. So when you deploy something on AWS, you get all of this right out of the gate, right? So just to highlight a little bit on the availability zone piece of it, so again, region is composed of multiple availability zones. Availability zone is one or more discrete data centers, right? All of these data centers, these availability zones are less than 100 kilometers apart from each other, right? And we have a high throughput, low latency network between these availability zones. So what that really means is you can run synchronous workloads across these availability zones, right? So you can run what we call as a multi-AZ, setting or capability that you can run for a lot of our services. Or what that really means is by default you get these, it's distributed across multiple availability zones, and you wouldn't even know the difference, right? I mean, that's the whole point, is like you can run synchronous workloads and you wouldn't see any latency, any performance issues, all of that, because it's all structured in a way, it's all architected in a way that if you are in one region and you're growing across multiple availability zones, you're expected to run workloads that are synchronous in nature. Functionality. So this is something that I wanted to, again, we talked about the breadth and the depth of it, right? So what we want to talk about, what I wanted to highlight here is the breadth of functionality, right? So if you look at it, right, so we talked about this infrastructure at the bottom, right, which is in green. We talked about the regions, we talked about the availability zones, we talked about the points of presence, right? So the way you look at this chart is, again, at the bottom are all the core pieces, right? So we talked about, we have these core services of compute, storage, databases. That's how, it's been traditionally, AWS has been known for, and it is still, expanding on that. We talked about security and compliance, right? We talked about how important that is for AWS and how many services we offer there. We have things for management tools, like, you want to build out, help you with automation, with monitoring, right? With management of your services, right? All of that automated, right? The click of a button, or scripted, to be able to alert it, in terms of, being, proactive alerting, reactive alerting, taking, action based on alerting, and so on. So we provide you a lot of tools in those areas, right? And then you go up the stack here, and then you have things like application services, or you have things like analytics, for example, Elasticsearch, or you have ETL, and these are all concepts that if you are building higher level applications, you tend to focus, you tend to use more of those, right? So nowadays, you want to analyze your data, you want to make sure, you want to get some value out of your data, right? You want to extract some value out of your existing data that you have, you would use some analytics tools. So we provide a lot of analytics tools. DevOps, right? So DevOps is another, it's a paradigm shift, it's a cultural shift, where now there is no demarcation of lines really between a developer and operations, development and operations, right? It's no longer just development, building some applications and throwing over the wall to an ops guy, and then ops people like now figuring out how to manage it, how to support it, and so on and so forth. So it's like the lines are getting blurred. It's almost like one team that's responsible for the whole end-to-end build and deploy and then management of the application. So we provide a lot of tools in that area. Mobile services, that's again very popular one, in terms of whether you want to do like targeted push notifications, or you want to do some kind of analytics around your mobile. If you already have a mobile data and you're collecting data, we provide services there. IoT is another, with all of these connected devices, cars and trucks and refrigerators and so on, right? So all devices are becoming the smart devices. They all have, they're all transmitting a lot of data. It's all coming through IoT, right? To be able to process that level of scale of data with that, either with that intensity, right? So we provide you a lot of services in that area. Machine learning, we talked about that. I mean, that's one of the hottest areas right now, and we are a leader in that space. You know, enterprise apps, sharing and collaboration, virtual desktop infrastructure. I mean, that in this current environment, that's gained a lot of visibility, a lot of prominence, right? So we provide a lot of services in that space. One of the other pieces is hybrid architecture, right? So we do recognize that large every company, small or large, right, will take a certain amount of time to move their existing infrastructure to the cloud, right? And it could be a multi-year journey. So we recognize that. So we provide a lot of these services that enable that hybrid architecture, right? So you are leveraging something on-prem, you want to be able to talk to something in AWS, and we provide you connectivity, we provide you secure connectivity, we provide you fast connectivity, we provide you ways to actually deploy some services now onto your own on-prem that can actually talk back to the nearest AWS region. So that way it becomes seamless, right? So we provide you multiple options and avenues where you can still keep running, some pieces of your infrastructure on-prem, right? And then slowly migrate the other pieces as you migrate towards AWS. So that's another area that we focus on. Migration is again part of that whole aspect of making sure that you're getting the most value. You're able to take your complex app, your difficult apps, your expensive apps, and move them onto AWS. Now you look at all these services, right? We don't want to leave you hanging. We don't want you to figure out like, oh my God, I have, what do I do? Where do I start? And so on. So you have people like myself, a solutions architect, or if you have enterprise support, you have technical account managers. You have a bunch of resources available to you who can actually guide you, help you. Look at, listen to you about your particular challenge or the issue that you are trying to resolve, right? And give you and walk you through the appropriate service and help you, implement that and so on. And then we will talk about marketplace. Marketplace is again an area where you can actually buy software, third-party software, which may not exist or which you already may own, in a manner that is reflective of the pay-as-you-go pricing, right? With like the rest of the AWS services. So we talk about I mentioned the partner network and the marketplace. I mean, that's really the part of the whole ecosystem aspect of it, right? So we have thousands of the technology and consulting companies, companies like Accenture, Infosys, Capgemini, these are all like big systems integrators, GSIs, we have a very, very tight relationship with, and they can help you implement your next big or any project that you might have, whether it's migration of your data center or it's big implementation or whatever on AWS. They can help you with that. Marketplace is, again, as I mentioned, so you might already have maybe Citrix, you might be running obviously like in a MongoDB or Cisco and things like that. So what we offer to the marketplace is for you to keep running that same software, but to be available through marketplace. What that really helps you do is get you into that pay-as-you-consume model on an hourly basis. We give you a one-click deploy solution, an automated solution. So we work with these vendors, and when they, you can go to the marketplace and you say, okay, I want to deploy this, MongoDB solution, database, or whatever. It's like a one-click solution, and it actually deploys all the infrastructure and the database under the covers onto AWS automatically. And then you get charged again on as you consume. we can work with you to figure out. So so the whole point of marketplace is for you to keep leveraging what you already have, right? With the with the third party software. So we're not, we work very well with all of this third party software. They run very well on AWS. So our intention is to make sure that we are as it's as you don't have to move on to like an AWS service if you don't have to, and if you feel like you're getting more value out of your current third-party software. Pricing is, again, we talked about cost and cost optimization, and so we go over and we are one of the few companies who actually go up to our customers and are actively looking to reduce their cost, right? So we have this whole a tool called Trusted Advisor, and the Trusted Advisor tool is really something that you can actually run in your own environment, and it'll tell you where you can actually save costs, right? So if you so we have like thousands of customers who, since the introduction of Trusted Advisor, have been running it, and you almost have a combined, like a total savings of around $200 million, right? So we have actually saved our customers. We actually tell them, hey, you don't need to be running this much. You can save money here. You can run. You can either shut down these servers because they're not being, they're not, has a very low usage, right? So all of these things we are able to identify with this service, right? And proactively alert you on saying, okay, this is where you can save money. So that very few companies actually do that, and actually this is, AWS is definitely one of those companies that proactively does that. We talked about the capex versus variable expense, which is the opex, and pay for what you use, essentially. So that becomes like, you don't have to allocate a big chunk of money up front, and you only pay for what you use. Our economies of scale, I mean, we are such a big entity. We buy servers, all our data centers, networking equipment, and so on and so forth, right? So we are able to leverage our size to get lower costs, right? So we are able to lower down the cost, and then what we do is proactively pass that cost savings on to you, right? As part of that, so we have done like around 85 price reductions since 2006, and we do that actually proactively, like without even anybody asking for it. We just, if we feel like we have now generated, we have enough optimization efficiency, and we have lowered the cost, right? We actually pass those savings back to the consumer. So we reduce the hourly prices for EC2 instances or any other services that you might have. So every time and again, you will see these announcements from AWS coming up, saying, hey, we have reduced the price for this, for EC2 instance, or we have reduced the price for this service, and so on, right? So that's something that we do that quite often. And then we have a pricing model. So we have things like on demand is something that is default, right? You spin up a machine and you only use it for how long you want to use it, and then you bring it down. And so that's one model. Then you have this reserved instances. Reserved instances are essentially, you're saying, okay, I need, we talked about the 3-server, 5-server concept, right? So those 3 servers are something that you need probably for the full year, right? So you would change that to a reserved instance. And reserved instances is essentially a financial concept. It's not a separate instance itself, right? So what that does is you're paying for that. Either you can pay for that upfront or partial upfront or no upfront, but you're basically saying, I'm reserving capacity, right? I'm reserving that instances for the full year, and then you get a discounted price, right? For that. And then finally, you have the spot instances, and spot is really the excess capacity that we at AWS have in our data centers, right? So we have all of this huge capacity in our data centers. Not all of that is used actively. So what we decided was, we said, hey, why can't we leverage this excess capacity. So what we do is we give that excess capacity to you at almost like a 90% reduction in price, right? The only caveat with these spot instances, again, it's a financial concept, is that we can take it back with a 2-minute notice, right? The reason being, if we run into a situation where we are running low on capacity, we would recall these spot instances back to fill up that capacity. Again, practically speaking, it doesn't happen very often, but we just want, that's something to keep in mind. So your workloads need to be appropriate for that to leverage the spot instances. But again, if you have the right workload, if you're able to save your data when a shutdown happens and move on and spin up another one, perfect use case, right? For analytics, for temporary workloads, and so on, right? So for that, again, you get that 90%, almost 90%, pricing reduction. And tiered pricing, the more you spend, the more you use, the more you spend on us, we actually give you get more and more discounts. You get volume discounts. You get we have custom pricing. We actually reduce based on the volume usage. Tiered, depending on how much, like storage, for example, depending on what kind of storage you're using, we provide you huge discounts. So if it's archival, so we have things like Glacier, which is like very, very low price because it's archival storage. As opposed to, again, we have tiered pricing in storage and in multiple other services, all with the goal of reducing prices for you. Operational reliability, I think this is something we talked about. This is again, what we have done is gained with experience, right? So Andy Jassy has always said, his famous statement is, there is no compression algorithm for experience, right? So we have gained a lot of operational experience, and we have learned over a period of time as to what makes it a reliable, secure, scalable infrastructure, and we have implemented that. Right, so that is the power that you get. You have things like SLAs, service SLAs, between 99% and 100% availability, and these 11 nines of durability for S3 and so on. Right, we talked about availability zones. And the other thing is, like, our CTO, Werner Vogels, has said, everything fails all the time, right? What that means is there will be a failure no matter what at some point, right? So you got to prepare for that. So those are some of the areas that we have learned, our lessons, right? And we have just, we've kind of, prepared for that and actually architected around that, right? So you get the benefit of our experience on that. I should be done. Apologize. I started a bit late, but we are almost there. So finally, so then, the other piece is customer obsession, right? That is, again, if you're aware of our leadership principles, customer obsession is one of our prominent ones. That kind of trickles down to everything, right? All of our services. So we don't build a service. You saw those 175 plus services there, right? We don't necessarily, none of those services was built just on our own, right? We just didn't wake up one day and said we need to make a service, right? We listen to our customers. 90% of the roadmap, right, originates with customer requests and are designed to meet specific needs, right? So we work backwards from the customer. We hear from the customer and look at what their challenges are, and then we work back towards that, right? So just that's a very critical aspect, critical area, just the whole fact that we focus purely solely on the customer, their requirements, their challenges, their needs, and then design a solution for that. Just a quick overview of the types of customers that we have. You can see, there are a lot of customers, and again, this is a subset of customers, but you can see, like, cloud only, cloud native customers like Netflix or Airbnb, who have grown on the cloud itself, to a lot more traditional legacy ones. Capital One is a big transformational company, a huge company that's running all on AWS, has really transformed itself into a big, a very sophisticated digital bank. and it's all built on AWS. They have leveraged the power of AWS. So, no matter how small you are, whether you're a startup, you are a small, medium, Fortune 500 company, AWS, is leveraged across the board for all of that. Finally, so this is some ways that you can leverage AWS. You want to migrate and free up your resources. As you go on to AWS, we manage the infrastructure for you. You don't have to worry about all those operational expenses, operational challenges, and so on, managing and maintaining those systems. We ensure the security, compliance, right, resiliency. We talked about all of those aspects as to what you get out of the gate when you come onto AWS. We provide all that. And then modern application development practices, right? So, when you get onto AWS, like we let you say, okay, you can, things like microservices, things like serverless, all of those are concepts and new paradigms, application development paradigms that you can leverage when you get onto AWS. You can get with data analytics, the amount of tools that you provide on analyzing your data. You can put everything into like an S3 bucket, which is really like an object-oriented, an object data store. You can dump everything there, and you can just analyze, done with a lot of tools like Athena and machine learning tools on those, and get a lot faster, deeper insights, a lot quicker. You can, again, speed and agility. We talked about that. Since undifferentiated workload, we take care of that. You can deploy something quickly, fail fast, deploy something else, and so on. Right? You can experiment a lot faster. And then finally, we can help you bridge those skills and experience gaps rapidly. Right? So we bring a lot of experience and skills to the table, and we can help you bridge some of that gap quickly. Yeah, so with that, that is the end of my presentation. Hopefully it was useful. You found something useful in it. If there are any questions, I'm more than happy to help. I'm sorry we went over time, but I apologize for not being able to connect initially. I don't know if there are any questions. Okay. If not, thank you. Thank you all for joining today. I appreciate it. And hopefully you found this information useful. And thank you.